Hello and welcome to SEO Ranking's Do Follow podcast. Here we hold regular talks with SEO and digital marketing experts to discuss hot SEO topics and share actionable insights with the SEO community. So subscribe to stay on top of everything going on in SEO. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how AI content affects SEO branding. Basically, we want to figure out how businesses can take advantage of such tools to come out on top. I'd like to welcome our guest, Mordy Oberstein, the head of SEO branding at Wix. Welcome, Mordy. Great to have you with us.
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Two great topics that I love talking about, SEO and branding.
Yeah, looking forward to getting started. And actually, without further ado, we want to just jump right into it. But first, I'd like to start by asking you a bit about how you got into SEO and why.
By accident. And so that I would be able to feed my family. I was originally for my SEO career originally, I was working for an educational software company. In another lifetime, I was a teacher. In another lifetime, as a CEO of a property management company. It's my third career already. I've been doing this for 10 years. And I was working on teacher manuals, and I was writing all sorts of content for them. I have a very, very strong content background. And they said, hey, you're one of the only native English speakers at this company. Could you write web content? I'm like, I can write anything, whatever you want. I don't like writing like salesy content, but outside of that, and I could do it if I really wanted to, but I don't want to. I'll write anything. I said, great. And then they said, can you get us organic traffic? And I said, sure. What's that? And that's and that's how I started at SEO. And ever since, the rest is history, basically.
And as far as I've mentioned, you are the head of SEO branding at Wix. And could you tell us a bit more about Wix and what you actually do there? What is your role? How you help them out?
Would love to. So Wix is a CMS. It's a website builder and CMS. You can build a website. You can spin a website. It is, well, I'll say it's no code. Like, you don't have to use code, but you could if you want to. For example, we have a full stack dev tool that you can use, and CSS is customizable with our Wix Studio platform for agencies. And it's really, I'll quote our head of SEO communications, Crystal Carter. Wix is cavernous. It's a hugely deep tool. I don't want to sound like I'm plugging too much. That really lets you build up your business. It really lets you scale up your clients' businesses. And that's why, for example, I'm here talking with you because we have a brand new SEO ranking integration inside of the Wix app market that I, first off, absolutely love this tool. And I'm not saying that because I'm on your podcast. I'm saying that because I freaking love the tool. That helps you deep dive into competitive analysis. So if you don't know who your competitors are, you can now, inside without leaving the Wix platform, use SEO ranking to find out who your competitors are. If you know who they are, you can dive deeper into them and understand, like, hey, what are they actually doing? Where are we competing? Where are we not competing? And how can I leverage that to beat them? That's what we're all about.
Yeah, thanks for the shameless plug of SEO ranking.
Shameless. Marketer's going to market, buddy.
Yeah, of course. And I remember we did an event with Crystal Carter, so tell her hi. And we basically talked about a bit of the intro. Got with that out of the way. Let's actually get to the nitty-gritty stuff that everybody wants to know about today. So let's talk about, how would you describe the current relationship between AI-driven platforms like Google's Bard, Bing's chatbot, ChatGPT, and the SEO branding strategies of digital businesses?
I think it's immature. I think you want to, if I had one word to describe it, one of the technology point of view, the technology is very, very new. The technology itself is immature. If you look at very recently, Google talked about, hey, if you want to, you theoretically could block the AI chat experiences from our AI tools, whatever it is, to coming to your website and crawling and understanding your content. But we'd really like you not to do that because we need your content in order for us to be able to train our AI systems. And the New York Times said, no. Right? So the whole ecosystem is immature. Google needs the content. The cat's out of the bag. Back in the day, right? OpenAI was doing this. It was training itself on our content without anybody realizing it. But now everybody knows about it. Everyone's like, hey, wait a second. Maybe we don't want to be the ones training your AI tools. Just to show how immature it is, the ecosystem is so immature that the incentive cycle, the incentive for publishers to allow an AI platform to come to their website and use their content for a database isn't there yet. And Google needs it, and they're saying that they need it, and publishers are like, why should we give it to you? And the answer is, there's no good reason at this point. That's how immature the whole ecosystem is.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's too early to just stop feeding it data and just start producing good stuff for us. Yeah, so we just definitely need to have that overlap period for a lot longer. It feels like.
And we need to understand like what these tools are actually going to look like. Even on the SGE side, like what these tools are, how it's going to function. Google announced their search editor experience at Google I/O in May. I'm terrible at times. May, I think. It's amazing. There's all sorts of things. What it is now, what we're looking at now, I don't know, flash forward a year, two, whatever it is, it's going to look completely different at that point. So we're talking about how do we optimize, how do we deal with this ecosystem, but we don't really understand what the ecosystem fundamentally is going to be. Maybe not now. I mean, now we do know, but in a year from now, what's it going to be? I don't know. Good question.
Yeah. So getting to that, I'm not going to ask you like specifically what's going to happen in a year, but in what way has the emergence of such platforms changed or reshaped the traditional concept of SEO for brands, like how we handle it?
Let's say let's go with the no. We know what SGE is, and let's say it doesn't change. Let's for argument's sake, it's going to be like this forever. Now what? And I think it really does kind of kill the era of the keyword to a certain extent. I think that has been dead for a long time with semantic search and machine learning and the algorithms and RankBrain and Bird and all that great stuff. What I think AI does, or what I think SGE does in particular, is it says, okay, wait a second. It's not about a page or an optimization per se. It's about your website as being an entity. And by the way, that is a very brand-oriented way to think about it. And I think it's important. I've been talking about this since 2018. Your website is an entity. It's a thing. It has an identity. And for a long time, SEOs like myself, Cindy Crum, Glenn Gale, tons of people saying, hey, look, like think about your website a little bit differently than you have been in the past because Google's looking at it a little bit differently. And I think SGE kind of puts that into focus. We had, for example, we had Cindy Crum on our own podcast talking about how SGE or how entity-based keyword research really comes into focus. And what that basically means is understanding that you don't just want to target a keyword, you want to target all of the keywords that position your website to be an authority, to be an entity around whatever it is that you do. So let's go with Google's own example. So when they announced SGE, they talked about some kind of a query. What was it? I want to hike Bryce Canyon, and I have pets, and I have kids, and I have this, and I have that. What do I need to know? And Google shows results in the SGE. It shows an initial set of cards, and you can actually then expand it and get a further breakdown. What kind of website is Google going to show in those initial cards for a query around hiking Bryce Canyon with kids and pets? It's not going to show a website that has a good page about hiking Bryce Canyon with kids and pets. It's going to show websites that fundamentally their identity is about hiking Bryce Canyon from a perspective of kids and pets and driving. Everything you need to know about Bryce Canyon, that's the website they're going to show, because that's a website that's an entity around hiking Bryce Canyon. So what SGE does, in my opinion, is it takes away the focus on a particular page about a particular topic, or I'm going to target a long tail keyword here, and it puts the emphasis on your site being an entity that Google associates with the topics you want to appear for.
So yeah, this makes a lot of sense. To think about the entity side. So all right, I'm moving on to my next question. For businesses aiming to appear as top results for platforms like SGE, what practices should they adopt in their content or SEO strategies to succeed?
So I think it's a great question. I think it kind of brings to the focus like where the work for an SEO is in an SGE kind of environment. And I think it's very much at the strategic level and at the strategic content level in particular, and that obviously overlaps all the other areas in SEO, particularly with interlinking. I'll talk about that in a second. But what I generally think is like, and I think it also aligns with Google's mom. And I think just to zoom out like real big, there's a fundamental problem with SGE, and that's Google was in the AI wars. Google has to compete with Bing, and Google pushed out SGE because it had to compete with Bing. Bing kind of beat it to the punch, but now Google kind of, reclaimed its role as king of the SERP. And it sort of is a different direction from what Google, if you look back the last couple of years, what Google's been doing and Google's been talking about, and particularly referring to multi-task unified model. I always mess up the acronym, but basically what it does is, among other things, but from a query point of view, it basically parses out a query on steroids. And Google gave the example, if I want to hike the query was, I want to hike Mount Fuji. I just finished hiking Mount Adams. I want to now hike Mount Fuji in the fall. What do I need to do to prepare? And what MUM does, it parses out prepare. And it's okay, what does it mean to prepare? prepare? Like, does that mean understanding, like preparing, like what tools and what supplies you're going to need? Does that mean actually preparing physically and training? And it parses it out and says, you know what? We'll show both. We'll show all the things that it means to prepare. That's a very different direction than SGE, right? That's basically creating an experience like a content portal. I want to know what it means to prepare for a hike. Here's videos about this and videos about that and videos about this and podcasts about this and results about this and images about this, and really giving the user an opportunity to explore all the different aspects about what it means to prepare for a hike. That's very different than SGE. And then at a certain point, Google's going to have to unify those two things together and say, okay, we want to win the AI wars. We also want to win what users actually want and how they actually are changing their content consumption behavior. And that's more from a MUM point of view, from a content portal kind of view. And we need to combine those two things together. And those two things from an SEO strategy and from an SEO optimization, to answer your question, kind of overlap. And that means taking a topic. Let's go with the hiking thing. I love it. You love how Google always gives hiking examples, right? Someone at Google must love hiking. And that's why they always use the hiking examples. Sure. But let's go with the hiking thing. And okay, we're going to have we're going to talk about hiking Bryce Canyon again. What it basically means to optimize for SGE, in my opinion, and to optimize for the eventuality of MUM, which is not fully integrated into the algorithm yet, is going to parse what it means. What does it mean to go for a hike topically? I'll give you another, because I'm a big baseball nut. So like I search go to a Yankees game. Yankees are a baseball team. What does it mean to go to? Does it mean to buy tickets to? Does it mean how do I get to there? Does it mean, what kind of food? What restaurants are nearby? Does it mean can I wear the other team's colors or jersey? Will I get my butt kicked if I do? Is the neighborhood good? What other attractions are? What does it mean to go to a game? It means a lot of different things. Being an entity, like we just mentioned before, around going to a Yankees game and aligning to the eventuality of Google trying to offer different topical parsings to users means splitting up that topic. It means comprehensively covering that topic. It means having a piece of content around how to get to a Yankees game, the restaurants at the stadium, the rules of engagement at the stadium. If you're in the bleachers, don't cheer for the other team because your safety will be in question. It means how to get the best tickets, where the best places to sit at the game are. For hiking, it means, how to hike, how to prepare for the hike, what materials you're going to need, which hikes, what to bring, what not to bring, who to bring on the hike with you. Should I bring a guy? Should I bring my kids? Should I bring my dog? Everything around splitting up those topics and showing Google that you are an entity. You are, for a cliche way of putting a topical authority around that topic. That's how you're going to align. That's how you're going to show Google. And what you fundamentally want to do, because you're talking about machine learning here, right? The way to optimize for machine learning is to fundamentally align with their profile. Google profiles a certain thing in a certain way. I'll give you just a quick example. And John Mueller's talked about this. You can find the article on SEO Roundtable. For certain kind of verticals, Google profiles a topic differently. What do I mean? If you're talking about heart attack prevention, use a certain tone and a certain kind of content you need to produce. If you're talking about like how to be a comedian, your tone should probably be very different. And Google can profile those things differently. They've said they can. When you're optimizing for machine learning, what you want to do is fundamentally align with the profile. How is Google profiling your niche, your vertical, and aligning with that profile? So because, hey, our profile for this kind of content is X. You are X. Perfect. We want to rank you. And that basically means understanding the right way to the type of content you need to produce, the parsing of the content you need to produce, in what format and what tone and what level, or the various levels, the various kinds of content you need to produce in order to align with that. That's fundamentally how you align with optimizing for appearing in SGE.
It seems like a lot, but I think I got the main concept. So instead of just trying to promote a specific page, you see yourself as this entity and you promote this entity and do your best to make it clear to Google who you are and what you are associated with, right?
Yeah, and that's not my topical parsing. Like, you really have to take the thing that you talk about, the thing that you deal with, and that could be many things. You flush it out. There's comprehensive coverage of it. And if you want to get more to this, the technical side of SEO, I don't mean the tech SEO, I mean like the more nitty gritty around SEO, internal linking comes into focus. really giving Google the ability to see how all of your clusters relate to each other, to be able to show them that you are that entity. So there is a lot that goes into it beyond just the topical parsing, but fundamentally, it's really about having that coverage.
Right. Thank you, Morty. And the second part of this question is like the chatbot experience, the AI chatbot. So SG is more the typical search. It just provides a bit more information, sort of transforms it into text that it believes that you're looking for. But with Bing's chatbot or ChatGPT or Google's Bard, like the creative tool, it sort of goes a bit different direction, but still there are opportunities for branding, placement, and to take advantage of this as companies. And I realize that maybe this is like something that nobody knows about, but do you have an opinion on this? What we can do to appear in Bing's chatbot or ChatGPT for a question like, I want to go with like a specific product, because I think it's in my mind, it's easier to sort of make that connection instead of if we go for a hiking, there's no brand involved, so it's just a process.
Right.
But if we go for a query that involves a brand, the answer.
Wix, right? I want to be, what are the best website builders? You want Wix to show up.
Right.
Yeah. And that really does come down to branding in a lot of ways. And when I say branding, I mean that in a very, very, very broad sense, right? And first off, like, I think it's important to sort of split up the two tools. Like Bing and their results on their SERP and Google's SG are very, very similar. Then you have like the AI platforms themselves, so Bard and ChatGPT. And those aren't for links necessarily, right? You're not going to get like link traffic. Bard does show links sometimes, but I wouldn't worry. It's not, they've said this, right? It's not meant to be a place to siphon you off to a website. So it's important to think about when you're talking about Bard, or you're talking about ChatGPT itself, that's really a branding thing. Like that you're not like, if you're like, oh, where's my link? There are no link to ChatGPT. It's really about the branding side of it. Just want to make sure the audience like clearly understands that, and that it is really about branding. And it's very, very similar to what I said before. You need to have a brand presence. You need to have, and it really does if you're an SEO listening to this, you really, in general, have to think about the branding and understand that you need to be out there in the communities that are important to you. So if you're SE ranking, you need to be out there in the SEO community. If you're Wix, you need to be out there in multiple communities, the site creators, designers, developers, SEOs even, and really building up a presence, a virtual online presence, digital presence, that's what we're looking for, a digital presence of your brand. And that means getting people to talk about you, getting people to write about you, getting people to cover you, being in the news when it's relevant. It's really that 360-degree, I am a player. I'm a known quantity. And I think it's really important to understand that these tools are going to pull back known quantities because they're scraping the web, and all of the mentions, all of the talk, all of the articles about whatever the topic relates to, if it's website builders, hopefully Wix, means articles about Wix, conversations about Wix, webinars about Wix, videos about Wix, YouTube videos about Wix, social media conversations about all of it comes together. And Wix having its own blog, its own podcast, its own webinars, all of these things being out there, being alive, having vitality. All of that starts from like the branding. And that's the only way, because the scrapers are just scraping what's out there. They're not coming up with their own answer.
How do such platforms determine the value of the content that you produce or its relevance? Is it only connected to the entity SEO concept, or is there anything else that determines the value or the relevance of the content that is?
No, it's really a momentum thing, in my opinion. It's a cadence thing, right? It's really that you have a presence where others are covering you, not just yourself, right? Others are talking about you. Again, we're not talking about SGE. We're talking about, let's say, Bard or ChatGPT, which is a very different thing. It's other people covering you. It's the fact that, if you go to you click on the news tab, you're in the news, just for example. People are when they're writing articles about best website builder, so Wix is in there. It's like really with
backlinks, authority.
It's not in backlinks, right? It doesn't have from an SEO point of view, it's the backlinks, but this always brings in the old question: are mentions worthwhile? Well, from this point of view, yes, mentions are very worthwhile. If I have an article that says reviewing Wix website builder, and it's a big name website doing it, CNET, I don't know, is doing it, and they don't link to Wix. Okay, from an SEO point of view, blah 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 blah. But from a branding point of view, ChatGPT doesn't care whether there's a link to me or not. It just sees the title on CNET. But there's no trick to that, in my opinion. I think people are going to be, all right, I'll pay for a link on CNET. I'll pay for a link on Forbes. There's really no trick. Like, it's really about momentum and cadence. And a lot of that starts at the community level of really engaging people and building up that brand. I always say internally, I'm not for advocating for chopping down forests, but you really have to chop the forest down one tree at a time. And if you're not going to have the patience from a branding point of view to chop that forest down one tree at a time, you won't get to the point where the forest is now cut down. And again, I'm not advocating that forest should be cut down. Terrible analogy.
The next question that I had was, right now when we do SEO, we know that we want a keyword or like a page to rank for a keyword in a certain position, like on page 1 or in spot 3. But how do we gauge these metrics when trying to determine whether we did a good job in terms of feeding our data to AI tools, like platforms? So like, once again, going back to the SGE example, I have a query, I get a result. How do I understand whether we did a good job with our content, with our web pages or not? If there is no link, or maybe there is a link, but it just sort of mentions our ideas without a click.
It's a great question. It becomes really tricky because do you have the data or not to even do it? Then how do you go about it? So Bing, by the way, said that I think they've already started this. I believe I'm correct, that you'll be able to see the traffic. I'm almost 99% sure I'm correct. You can see the traffic coming from their SGE version of SGE to your website. So you can see inside of Bing's, not called Webmaster Tools anymore, was it Clarity, whatever it's called. You could see, right, this traffic came from SGE. But that doesn't really answer the question entirely. Let's conceptually understand the question. And if we've always had to get creative with this, for example, a local pack. It's not always the case that my website is listed or linked to in the local pack. How do I track that? Well, I have to see, sometimes correlation doesn't equal causation, but it's nice. I all of a sudden started ranking number 1 in the local pack. And all of a sudden I realized my sales are up, like physical. I have more cash in my register right now. What happened? Right, so it's not a new question. This is an old question in SEO. And I always like saying this, the idea of a box that may present us, but is not necessarily linked to us or linked to us the way we want to, is not new. Local packs have been around forever. But it does mean getting a little bit creative with it and understanding, hopefully there will be a report inside a Search Console, like there was in Bing, that will help us clearly understand that. At the same time, however, understanding where you do show up and where you are mentioned is incredibly important, because I am somebody who believes in brand marketing, because I do a lot. My job at Wix is to leverage, what we do and to show the world that here's what the brand means for SEO. That's at least part of my job. So I love brand marketing. So I'm obviously a little bit biased in saying I think there's a lot of value in what happens on the SERP for your brand. Meaning, even if you don't get a click, I think there's a lot of value if it happens consistently. If you're searching, let's say you're searching for a bunch of SEO stuff and you see, a feature snippet for SEO ranking or the Wix SEO Learning Hub plug, and over and over and over and over again, and you don't click, but you keep seeing those little favicons there. That has an impact. I think that has an impact. So knowing when you show up, where you show up in the SGE is important. And I don't think there are any tools maybe SEO ranking can make one, that tell you when you appear, when you're mentioned in the SGE. If not, that means manually thinking about what queries are really important for you and seeing and determining if you are in the SGE. And by the way, it's even trickier because on many queries, SGE doesn't trigger automatically. You have to trigger the SGE. So then you have to qualify, okay, show up in the SGE, but what's the likelihood of somebody clicking on the SGE here? And to take it one step further, there's 2 parts of the SGE. There's the initial SGE with the write-up, and then there's the expanded view. And I love the expanded view. I think it's great for what smaller websites are doing. And you can click to expand Google's initial SGE. And what it does is it gives you it takes the paragraph that they wrote and it breaks it down line by line, basically, or concept by concept. And underneath each concept shows more result cards. So going back to their initial query, right, about hiking Bryce Canyon with kids. So let's say Google says, Bryce Canyon is great to hike with kids, blah, 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 blah. And the next sentence says, for pets, you might want to consider blah, 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 blah. When you expand the view, the line that talks about kids and the hike, you'll get a bunch of pages, a bunch of results about hiking Bryce Canyon and kids. The next line about pets, you get a bunch of results about hiking Bryce Canyon and pets. So you need to show up your show because you might not show up in the initial 3, 4, whatever results, but you might show up in the expanded view. So now you need to figure out how likely is it that somebody clicked the SGE, then how likely is somebody click the expanded view and saw my result there. Good questions. I don't have the magic answer for that.
Yeah. I know. We just wanted to get the ball rolling and get a discussion because I realized the topic is new and you don't have all the answers. I mean,
I wish I had the answer.
We want them as much as we want them. Yeah. We understand that it's still happening. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. Then let's talk about how does the AI's presentation of brand content in search affect user perception and brand trustworthiness? I realize that it's all a bit all around there.
Absolutely. In particular, right? Let's say think about a scenario like this. People generally don't they're trying to buy something. And let's make it like something complicated, something expensive. They're trying to buy what's expensive? A house, a car. I don't want to do a house or a car. A really expensive laptop, a supercomputer laptop. And it costs, $10,000. They're not going to run one query. They're going to run multiple queries, maybe the same query multiple times. And if they run multiple queries, which is the best for this, which is the best laptop for that, which is the best laptop for this, and for that, and for that, and they keep seeing like Lenovo over and over and over again being recommended, they're going to say, you know what, let me look at Lenovo. This is how it works. And the funnel, the funnel is messy. And your brand name showing up over and over and over again has incredible value. And I know when as SEOs, we're like, well, I can't measure it with traffic and analytics. I don't care. If Google keeps showing me something over and over and over and over again, I'm going to be like, you know what? Yes, I'll go with that one.
But isn't a lot of what Google does relies on user engagement interaction? So like we leave a mark of like, if we click on it, it's good stuff. But if we always miss that link, Google is eventually going to put it down. So
I'm talking about in their SGE. They're having, if you're talking about like the write-up, right? So you Google, which computer is best for gaming? And Google gives you a summary. It says, generally speaking, many people recommend Lenovo. Other people recommend Dell. Here's a whole bunch of list of products. And then you search for, which is not the best for gaming, but like, which is the best? Okay, I'm a big gamer, but I need to use it for work. Which is the best business laptop? And you get the same kind of little summary, right? Like, many people say that, Lenovo is great, great line of products for business computers. And, Dell also does, whatever. Here's a whole bunch of list of products. You keep seeing that name Lenovo over and over again. You're going to start Googling and start looking for Lenovos.
I'm just thinking like a bit of if this keeps on going and if we just always rely on what SGE produced, the written up part of the content without a click, how will Google understand our feedback? Is there a risk somewhere that our human touch will sort of be removed because we are no longer engaging as much as we did in the past? Because we're getting straight answers straight away.
Ranking point, because Google said like they don't, and whether you believe them or not, it's a different question. I personally do because I think there are a lot of sticking points that come about for doing this. Although Bing does say they use them. And they are behavior metrics, user behavior metrics. So Google says we don't use them for ranking. I'm not talking about personalization, right? I'm talking about like if a user goes to a Lenovo page and bounces right away, oh, Lenovo needs to be ranked lower. Google says they don't use that. So I can only go by Google says they do. Bing does say they use them. So that is a great question on the Bing side. If you want to play that card, right? If their SGE keeps recommending Lenovos, and then you keep going to Lenovo, how does that impact the ranking algorithms? That's a great question.
Yeah, and if they don't, if they always ignore this advice that is given, because actually when I asked this question, it didn't give me a straight answer like here's a brand. It's like always worried like, okay, we want to talk about everything before we even mention a brand. We want to like get into your head before. So like you only just think about the price, think about the data, think about the capabilities, and then we only talk about here are the options. Once you've given us an indication that you're more interested in, I don't know, speed, then we'll can give you an alternative. All right, and I have a question about how do you foresee the balance shifting between traditional SEO branding techniques and the new methodologies that AI demands? So this is sort of a bit of a guess, like whatever you think is going to be happening in the future in terms of the shift in how we do our work as SEOs and what AI demands.
So again, bias, because I do a lot of SEO, but I also do a lot of branding. And I think there's going to be a heavier emphasis on branding in general. Whether, how the ecosystem shapes out or not, and I do have specific thoughts about that. But let's just not even get to that yet. The ecosystem, the overall environment of companies and brands are going to focus more on branding, if they're smart at least. And most people are smart. There's going to be a flood of AI content. There already is a flood of AI content. You're going to have to differentiate your brand and your content, because your content is your brand. That's how you communicate yourself, is through content. And there's going to be smart brands. You already see big brands do. The Wirecutter does a tremendous job of this. They've been doing this for a while, even beyond AI, of trying to differentiate the brand with their content, which means that there's going to be less of, I need 5 best ways to do whatever, and more content that is focused more on the branding side, because that content is very much traffic oriented. Give me the traffic, give me the traffic, give me the traffic. And the ecosystem has been incentivizing that kind of content for a long time. And the idea of AI coming in and creating a whole bunch of crap content, I'm not really worried about it, because we've been creating all the crap content for the last 20 years because of this kind of thing. Was it okay? Now a machine is going to create the crap. Wonderful. But what I'm excited about with AI is that it's going to push brands that are intelligent to do better content to differentiate themselves. And you've already seen the brands that haven't get into trouble. I think it was CNET, and I think it might have been Bankrate, who started spinning up AI written content, and they got slaughtered. There was all sorts of inaccuracies in there. It was very generic. It didn't really answer the questions, and people pushed back on it. So smart brands are going to differentiate the content, which means there's going to be a heavier emphasis on brands. So if you, as an SEO, come and say, hey, what we should do? We should target this keyword and get all this traffic. Maybe a year or two ago, the brand would have been like, fine, let's do it. I think you're going to start seeing brands pushing back saying, okay, I hear what you're saying, but how does this impact my brand perception? Which is really a question they should have been asking the whole time. And SEOs are going to have to start balancing traffic acquisition, pure traffic acquisition, with brand. And I think it's going to be an uncomfortable place for many SEOs for a long time until we get the hang of that. Because it means a lot, nitty gritty, it means a lot of things. It means, okay, not just what am I targeting, but now you say to the brand, hey, okay, we agree to target the content, fine. I think you should put the keyword here, the keyword there, and optimize the header to say this. And the brand might say, that's nice, but it doesn't fit what we're doing as a brand to differentiate ourselves from our other brands. So another suggestion, please. And now you're going to have to figure out a way, as you're going to have to get creative with this, to optimize the header, but also align with what the brand wants to do at the same time. Good luck to us all.
Yeah, well, it sounds like fun, and either way, we have to figure out, try and test different methods. Let's talk about ethical concerns, just because we're sort of coming down to the end. We're almost at the main takeaways, and just it makes sense to talk about the ethical concerns when dealing with AI-driven search platforms. So, what do we need to think about in terms of ethics when creating content or optimizing content using such tools or for such platforms? Just
endless. There's ethical concepts on the tool side, right? Again, going back to what we spoke about, we started with this podcast with I want to pull your content into our data sets so we can train our AI. And I've been doing that this whole time without telling you is an ethical concern. On the content creator side or on the SEO side, who's the author? I mean, let's say you have the AI spit it up and then you had someone edit it. So what do you have written by AI, edited by, by Paul and Mary? What do you do there? Also on the client side, you say oh yeah, I did all this. I spent hours for you writing this content. And what you really did was you threw it into an AI writer and you spent 5 minutes on it. So that's also another ethical temptation that may present itself to SEOs, content marketers in particular.
Right? I think I've already heard about companies saying that they're promised to mark all human-created content, all AI-created content, all in the mix, something in between, as a given that this is something that is coming. Let's sort of bring this conversation to a close, and I wanted to get your 3 thoughts. Well, to somebody who is just starting SEO branding in today's era of AI tools, where this is an opportunity for them to get a lot of help, what 3 actionable steps, or they don't have to be 3, but what actionable steps would you recommend that they take today, starting as soon as they finish listening to this podcast?
One is to keep up with what's changing. I think it's really, really important. I know like there are many, many people who, they'll go to SEO. I myself plug for Barry Schwartz. We all like to plug Barry Schwartz, and we should, because Barry is amazing. Well, head over to SEO Roundtable, read what's happening in the news, and keep up with where things are going. I think that's always been important. I think that's more important now than ever, to really understand because when you see what's happening over time and you read the SEO news every day, and I don't just mean like the big stories, I mean like the nitty-gritty stories, you start to really understand the ecosystem and what kind of environment that we're living in. And I think that's going to be more important for SEOs to understand going forward. I think pulling back a little bit and thinking a little bit from the branding point of view and asking if content passes what I call the brand sniff test, right? So you look at a piece of content and you're like, yeah, as a person, you go to a web page, you're like, you know what? This doesn't look right. Doesn't sound right. This is off. I think from an SEO point of view, if it does pass, it sounds right, it looks right, it comes off right, it's positioned right, the tone is right. I think all of those things help for your SEO overall. Like it will essentially mean that the content that you created is quality content, because quality content is going to be coming more into focus. And the last thing I'll say is try to keep up on wider marketing trends beyond just SEO, because it exists out of SEO. And I'll give you a clear example of what I mean. People are not looking for information from brands anymore. They want information from people. So all the young people, I'm an old person, all the young people go to TikTok for information. I go to TikTok to watch people fall downstairs and dance. But I guess people actually go for information, which is, as an old person, blows my mind. But as a marketing trend, it means they want information from people. Where do you see that in the SEO world? You see the Google with the extra E and EEAT, experience. That's information from people. What's happening out in the wider ecosystem, the wider marketing ecosystem, content consumption ecosystem, eventually finds its way into SEO. Inevitably. Why? Because Google wants to give the user what they want. In this case, it's experience. So your content, I've seen a great example. I'll go back. It's like the Wirecutter does a great job of this, I believe. They'll actually say I, we, right? They're using first-person language, and they're pulling in actual experience into the content. They'll get quotes from an expert. So-and-so said when they used the product, they had a hard time with blah, 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 blah. That real person element finds its way into SEO. So keep an eye on wider marketing trends, understand what's happening out there, because it does eventually make its way into SEO. And because AI is not an SEO thing per se, understanding the wider challenges and ecosystem of that is more important than ever to keep up on, because it's not an SEO thing, it's an AI thing.
All right, Mordy, this has been great. I want to sign off by saying that today, Mordy Oberstein shared with us his expertise and thoughts on how AI content affects SEO branding and what businesses can do about it. Thank you for your time, and be sure to subscribe and join the next episode of the Do Follow podcast.